So I started off the year uh, with a read the Bible in a year plan, right? 2020 is my year. I'm going to read through the Bible in a year. I'm going to start January 1st, Genesis 1:1. I'm going to end on December 31st, Revelation. Oh my gosh, is it 22? I think that's the last chapter. Anyways, last chapter in Revelation. 2020 is going to be my year. It's like, man, this is going to be it. Last year, not great, but this year, it's going to be it. And just 10 days in, I forgot and I messed up. So, yeah, kind of down about that. 2021, it's going to be my year for sure. I'm going to read through the Bible then. Oh yeah, it's going to be it for sure. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm just kidding. It was a Bible in a decade. So 2030s is going to be my decade for sure. All right. Just got to start off a little lightly here. For those of you listening, welcome. Very excited. This is a brand new thing, brand new project. Man, this is exciting for me, and I hope it's exciting for you. So today, I want to start with a topic that will be easy for you as a listener to give feedback and to give questions on. Topic for today is, bump that camera a little bit. Topic for today is what it's like being a Christian in college. So as you're listening through the show, maybe you're in college right now, and you could send me feedback, and on the next show we can talk about it and talk about your experience. Maybe you have a different experience from me. Maybe you have questions about my experience. That's great. I welcome those. Maybe you're not in college yet, and you do have questions about that that I didn't answer in the show. That's great too. So send them in. I definitely want to have a big portion of the show devoted to questions, so that way it's not just me complaining and giving my opinion on it. Well, I guess it'll still be giving my opinion on the questions, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. All right, so let's get into it. So what it's like being a Christian in college. So I'll start off kind of giving you the simple answer maybe that you're already expecting is it's a test test of faith. Now, I was not Christian before I came to college. I converted the fall semester of my freshman year, and I'm a sophomore now. I go to UC Berkeley, and so it's interesting what I'm learning now, because you certainly have a lot of independence in college, and you have a lot of autonomy. And it's actually really scary coming onto campus as a Christian, because I think there's the spiritual battle that's being waged on this world. What you may say is Satan has strongholds on college campuses, to say the least. I mean, first off, there's solid academic competition. It's so easy to turn academic competition into an idol and put God and your relationship with Him on the back burner. Also, it's very isolating. It can be very isolating at times, because if you come into college without a church community, you're only in class for a semester. Like in high school, you're with the same group of people for 4 years, usually with the same type of people in all of your classes, in classes for a longer period of time. But in college, it's a semester at a time, maybe even a quarter at a time, even shorter, and your living situations can be pretty isolated. Also, there is a huge temptation for the party culture to make yourself, known and try to be popular in the party culture. That runs very rampant in college. I remember freshman year, it was the first semester, and I was looking in the dining halls, and I'm seeing all these guys and gals getting all dolled up, and they're getting ready to go party and whatnot, and I felt pretty burdened for them, because As I'm sure you know, on the college campus, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of promiscuous sex, and just things that are really, really demeaning to the body, demeaning to what God has created us for. And it can be very tough. There's a lot of idols around you, a lot of people who hold those idols very firm, and if you're in bad company, that definitely rubs off on you. So it's definitely very hard. It's very hard. But also, on the flip side, the college campus can be a great place for your relationship with God and with the church. Actually, why don't I back up a little bit? With all that being said about all the idols and temptations on campus, it really weeds out the kids growing up who just went to church just because their parents brought them to church. It weeds out the kids who go to church just because they like hanging out with their friends there. Going here to UC Berkeley, it's a very secular place. Many college campuses are very secular, very liberal, very anti-Christian. And so you will inevitably run into people who are against Christianity, who believe things against Christianity. So you have people with different ideologies going against you, but then you also have idols all around you, and the temptation is very strong. So college is a time where your faith will be tested. It will be tested no matter what. And I think even if you go to a Christian college, going to a place with autonomy, independence, academic competition, I think those things still run rampant. And even if you don't find yourself in a strong church community, I think even at a Christian college, your faith will definitely be tested. Anyways, college can be a great place for growing your faith because of that resistance. You could either dig your heels in or you could give up. But if you dig your heels in, you could really find why you believe what you believe. And another thing about college that's great is the fact that it can get you really close to an Acts 2 church picture. Acts chapter 2, verse 42 through 47. Give that a little bit of a read. College is a place where you can surround yourself with other Christians. You could I encourage you to find yourself a Christian community, and you can be like that Acts 2 church, because college is great in that you live very closely to one another. Everyone is going through the same type of struggles, the same type of idols and temptations are around. And so it can be a great place to really bear each other's burdens as we're called to, and have things in common. It's very, well, I should say majority of people in college, I think, finances definitely don't come easy. College is very expensive, so trying to bear each other's burdens, even financially is a big thing, but going out, just simple things, having lunch together, going out and doing activities in your spare time together, studying together, going to church together, going to Bible studies together. It's really great. And I myself personally testify to this because the culture that is in UC Berkeley, it would have a huge net negative on me if it weren't for the community of believers that I'm in. I live with with some Christian brothers, and it's fantastic. I think when you read the New Testament, it's very clear that God designed us to be in community. He designed us to love one another and to bear each other's burdens. And if you can find a group of like-minded believers and devote yourselves to living for God, it can be actually a really beautiful place where you can overcome those idols and temptations that I was talking about. But I want to talk about something like a bigger picture when it comes to Christianity on the college campus. So something that you might actually expect to hear from me, especially someone who's going to UC Berkeley, a very secular, very liberal school, if not the most secular and liberal school, certainly in the country, probably in the world, is you might expect me to say, oh, there's people protesting you every day. There's people protesting outside of your church every day. There's people yelling at you. And God forbid you make any sort of Christian comment in class because, man, the leftists, the communists, they're going to bite your head off. You might be expecting me to say that. I can't. And right now, this is actually where I would really like for you to listen up, because I want to hear what you have to say about what I'm about to say. So here at UC Berkeley, where you would expect this huge resistance, you actually get a slightly different picture. Now, I do acknowledge there are a fringe of people who are, they have darkness and evil in their heart, hatred towards religion, Christianity in particular. And yeah, they do go protest, but frankly, they don't have the energy to come out and protest us every day. I know my college ministry, we make ourselves very known. It's not hard to find us. And we don't get a lot of resistance, a lot of hate or anything, which I'm very thankful for. But here's something I want to really touch on that gets into a bigger theme of our culture and of this generation. What you experience, let me rephrase that, what I experience is a culture not so much of resistance, but a culture more of indifference. And what happens is, in a college class, in my discussions, I will be talking with some students. Now, I major in history, so sometimes things will come up that has to do with Christianity. It's very rich in history. And somebody will say something, and it's a misunderstanding of Christianity. And when it's appropriate, if it kind of hinders the historical understanding of that event, I'll correct it. Say, no, Christianity is more about this. And then if the question does come up, I'll try my best to say, I'm a Christian. I like to... I wish I was a little bit more brave and was a little bit more outspoken, but I guess maybe it's not always appropriate for that. But what I get overwhelmingly is the sentiment, and tell me if you can relate, is, oh, well, maybe that's true for you, but it's not true for me. A real popular one is, oh, that's your thing, but it's not really my thing. You can go do your thing. That's great for you. I'm happy you found that for yourself, but I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to believe what I want to believe. There's no intellectual curiosity at all, and I'll touch on that in a minute, but I find it interesting because in the media and today, our culture, our generation, we really try to pride ourselves on being a culture, being a generation of love and tolerance, which actually is pretty paradoxical, and I'll get to that in a second. But if you think about it, I mean, why would tolerance and love go together? How does that go together? I think they're actually very opposed, in that love is really caring for someone. Love is really being interested in someone else's well-being. I think it was Aquinas who said love is to will the good of the other person, and maybe even a caveat would be to will the good of the other person for their sake. So what that implies is that you want them to believe what is true, to have a worldview that is true and to exercise that worldview. And I don't get that at all. I mean, if someone at all really loved me, really loved the people around us, they would be trying to espouse what they believe is right to me and to others. And then we would have that intellectual bout where we can figure out what's true, what isn't, who's right, who's wrong. And it would be a rich discussion, and maybe truth can be discovered. But that's not what happens. We get this thing called tolerance. And tolerance is actually, I think it's indifference masked with a pseudo-love, if you will. Tolerance is, think about it. What do you tolerate? You tolerate things that barely annoy you. You know, I'm trying to think of an example. I wish the first one that comes to mind maybe makes me a little bit cold-hearted, but when I'm walking down the street and I see like a homeless person yelling and screaming, really kind of out of their mind, my heart breaks for them, and I'm saddened. But part of me is, I mean, let's be honest here, it can be a little annoying, especially if they start yelling at you, right? You got to kind of walk and act like they don't exist, which is sad. But you tolerate that. I think that you can relate with me on this. But we tolerate things that are beneath us. In fact, I think tolerance is creating distance. Tolerance is, I'm going to be as close to you as I can, where it looks like I'm acknowledging you, but if it like so much as cost me a second to invest in you and to care about you, I have put myself in a position where I'm not obligated to do that. I think that's what tolerance is in our culture. That's what it's come to be, and I think that's how it's played out. It's so opposite to love. And why do we have this tolerance culture and this indifference in us? And I think a lot of it is laziness. Our generation is just so plagued with media. And I mean, I'm not trying to sit here and say I'm holier than thou. I have these vices of media gripped on me all throughout the day. And it's so rampant in our culture. We want the media to think for us. We want to be distracted by it. We want to see what everyone else is doing. We want to put our best image in front of the world to get some sort of affirmation. And we're so focused on that we don't actually care about people. We come to start seeing people as not real. Maybe as in like the idea as you see cars driving down the freeway. Sometimes you forget there's actually people in those cars, especially when they cut you off. It's real easy to let out a curse word, certainly. But then you got to remember, hey, there's a person in there. And I think this media is creating the way that media addicts us and gets us to view people. I think that it blurs the line between seeing a person as, metaphorically speaking, as a car versus a person. That line is blurred. It's there, but it's blurred. And also that the distraction that media is, it makes us lazy. We don't really want to think about stuff. And I think that's really what it comes down to. That whole true for you, not for me. You do your thing, I'll do my thing. That's great for you. I'll do my own thing. I think that's what it comes from. You know, we don't want to engage. And I can't actually think of anything most opposite to love. If somebody hates something, at least they're engaged, right? At least they're giving you your attention. But man, that indifference is so strong. It's so strong. I think something to challenge us as Christians is, are we being the ones who are telling people that's true, that may be good. We may not say that's true for you, and so what I believe is true for me. We may not be saying that, but we certainly might be saying, oh, that's good for you, but I know what's good for me, and I'm doing what's good for me. Are you doing that? Am I doing that? I know I'm doing that. I do that a lot in my classes, and sometimes I beat myself up for it, and I feel bad. So I think that's something to think about. Are we treating people just indifferently, tolerating them in the most literal sense, not how this generation plays it out? I think that's something to think about, something to reflect on. And then what you come away from, hopefully that inspires you to action and to sharing your faith. Okay, going to move on to, I want to have a section in the show where I do like a current event. So I was like, all right, what current event do I come and talk about? And so, of course, I just looked up articles on Christianity Today, right? Whatnot. Makes sense. But I found a very interesting story on Christianity Today. It's called Boko Haram Executes Pastor Who Turned Hostage Video into Testimony. First thing that you'll see when you look up this article, and I highly recommend you read it, is you see the picture of the pastor. I'm guessing it's from his video. Now, I'm pretty sure they don't have the video online. But what's amazing is this man is about to meet his death. He's about to be martyred for his faith by a group of radical Muslims. And you look at his face, and it's poor. It's kind of a poor quality image, but there's peace, there's contentment, and there's no fear. I don't see any fear in his eyes. And another beautiful thing is I don't see any hate in his eyes at all. Now, this article talks about how the church, they tried their best to ask the radicals to send back their pastor, but they did not comply. The church also did not have any sort of military power to maybe wield against these radicals, even threaten them with. Their pastor thus died as a martyr. And this article talks about how, how frequently, this is in Nigeria, if I haven't said that already, but how frequently Christians are really persecuted in that country. And then talking about, it's number 12 among the top 50 countries where it's hardest to be a Christian. And also, there's a link in here about the 2020 World Watch List. I encourage you to click on that. You should come upon a map if you scroll down far enough. And you see it rich in North Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, where it's really hard to be a Christian. And I think about what this man, this wonderful man, this wonderful hero of faith did staring down death, staring down hate. What he did is he responded with peace, and with love, and with his testimony, sharing Jesus for the last time. I think about my life here in the States. I think about Christianity in America. We get so caught up in bickering with one another about different beliefs. We get caught up in the material. We get caught up in comfort of this world. We get caught up in the celebrities, the sports and whatnot, all these easy things of life, these nice things in life, and Christianity just turns into a compartmentalized part of our life. We may compartmentalize it to just a Sunday, maybe even just a Sunday to a Wednesday, or a Thursday, just a Bible study or something. And we forget that Jesus said, to make him our Savior, but also our Lord. And him being our Lord means we follow him. We do as Jesus does. We walk as Jesus would walk. I think about these things because Christianity seems to have become compartmentalized in America. But you look at these places in North Africa, the Middle East, and you can't compartmentalize it. I was talking with my pastor from my hometown when I go back on breaks. He was a missionary to Sudan in North Africa, and he said, in America, we have too much time on our hands. We bicker about things. We get caught up in real trivial things. But back in Sudan, it was simple. You either believed wholeheartedly that Jesus died for your sins and then was resurrected. You either believed that, or, I think in Sudan's case, you're a Muslim. And it's that simple. You don't have time for all this bickering. You don't have time for this compartmentalization. In these countries, do you think that these people are afforded the opportunity to compartmentalize God and Jesus? I don't think so. I look at this man who died a martyr. I think about what he said, turning his last words into a testimony for Jesus. What would I do? I'm so blessed and so thankful that I live in America. It's a fantastic country, very very safe. I think, man, if I was living in a place where your life literally was at stake for following Christ, what would it look like? Christ gave his life for me, his life, and was tortured nonetheless for me. And not just for me, but to give me heaven. And he did that for you too. So I think it makes sense. I only owe my life to Christ. And if that means that I have to be martyred for it, then so be it, right? Like, that's what it's supposed to be. But if I'm put in that position, what would I do? I mean, I think if anybody sits there and says, "Oh, I would rebuke these men and I would tell them to follow Jesus and I would die valiantly with love and peace and strength in my heart." I think if anybody comes out, especially somebody in America, comes out and says that, well, I don't know. Maybe I don't exactly have kind words for them, but at least they're definitely puffing up. Now, I would like to think that I would be as courageous as this man if I was in that position. Sure, I would certainly like to think that. But I want you to read this article, and I want you to look at this man's face in this video and think about that. If you were put in a position where following Christ every day meant that you could die for it, what would that do for you? I was talking about earlier about how coming to college campus certainly separates the wheat from the chaff when it comes to believers. And it is a form of persecution, but kids come to college campuses and they have these liberal, secular professors give their opinion, and idols are around them, and at the drop of a hat, they lose their faith. That's really what's happening. It's crazy. I mean, it is. It's really happening. Huge numbers of kids lose faith when they get to college. And I don't know, if you've never had a moment where your faith has been tested, and maybe you don't necessarily understand what you have, I encourage you to really pray and Not like, oh, pray for yourself so you're saved, but pray that you understand. God wants you to understand. He wants you to know maybe this gift that you have. He wants you to really know it. He wants it to be the essence of your life, knowing him, loving him, making him Lord. He wants that for you. And if you read the story, if you look at this man's face, you listen to what he went through. Think about how Christians in this world are being severely persecuted, and you come away with you're uncertain and you're not sure where you stand with God. I think that's a good thing. I think that's healthy. And I think that's your first step to really growing with God, strengthening your relationship with him. If you want to know a little bit more what that looks like, I can talk about that in the question section. But at first, it's simple as pray, read God's word, and also be in a community of Christians. Start off with people who are like-minded believers. And yeah, it's going to be hard telling those around you that the burdens you're with, it's going to be tough. But start off telling about the good things. That'll make it a little bit easier. Say, man, I'm so thankful for God doing this in my life, or I'm so thankful for, or at least talk about a time when you know that God got you through something. And then that will begin a relationship to where you can start really saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with this idol. I'm struggling with this sin. And I'm telling you, prayer, God's word, and being in a community of believers, man, that is how you are going to strengthen your relationship with God. So we're at about 30 or so minutes, and I want to devote the very last portion of the podcast to questions. Now, I did some advertising on social media and whatnot for people to send in some questions. At first, I was thinking about not doing any, but I had a friend reach out to me with some questions. I think it's a good time. Maybe you'll get a feel for what this question and answer time could be like. Not just you come to me for answers. I want your opinion too. Say, hey, I disagree with you on that, or hey, I agree with you on that. Tell me why. I want to hear from you. I don't want it to just be me. So first off, this is. Wait, let me get one more drink of water. So first of all, we have my good buddy Michael from back home. By the way, I'll just only share your first name. If you want to be anonymous, I get that because, the government and Illuminati, right? Here we have Michael. He asked a couple of really good questions. First one, he says, for many Christians nowadays, listening to a podcast of a church sermon or watching a sermon being live streamed is their go-to option on Sunday. Paul encouraged the body of believers to not forsake gathering together, Hebrews 10:25. Worship, prayer, and the preaching of the word were designed for the congregation of believers so that we would be strengthened by one another in the faith. He quotes from Proverbs 27:17, for as iron sharpens iron, so does man sharpen the countenance of his friend. So he says, so my question would be, do you believe we do our best effort to congregate, do you believe we should do our best effort to congregate on Sundays, or is it okay to simply stay at home to praise and worship? I understand if it's hard for people to make it every single Sunday, but the question is making an effort to go most Sundays, permitting you don't have anything serious come up. So that's his question. I think that's a fantastic question. Talking about a little bit earlier about the media, how engrossed we are in it, how strong it is on it. We get tempted to only live stream our services. Now, if that's your only option, if you have to stay home, then yeah, I'm thankful that you can, there's live streaming options out there. But if you're fully capable and you think, I should only live stream my church service, then I think you're kind of missing a point what Michael is actually getting at in his question. Not forsake gathering together, Hebrews 10:25, and then Proverbs 27:17. For as iron sharpens iron, so does a man sharpen the countenance of his friend. I came across this stunning realization in the New Testament that there's not such a thing called lone wolf Christianity. It is so meant to be in a community of believers. I mean, you look at the very, very early church, how I mentioned Acts 2. Look at that community. Being in community together, not just worshiping together, but praying together, but thinking about the issues of today and thinking about the issues of our faith today and bearing each other's burdens. That's so powerful. And I'll tell you something else. With or sort of a practical reason why I don't think you should stay home to live stream church services as opposed to going to them is our generation is so easily distracted. If you are live streaming a church service, I'd be willing to bet you check Instagram, you check Twitter, you check Snapchat, at least once of each, or you're busy with your dog or something. I mean, are you really like locking away your phone and all your distractions for an hour and a half while you're live streaming? I'd be willing to bet you're not. There's also something about being with believers, when we're singing to God. There's a safety you feel. I being here at UC Berkeley, you feel a lot of hostility to your faith, but man, when I'm there on Sundays, when I'm singing as badly as I sound, but when I'm of course under the crowd just enough to hear myself, I don't want to go over people, right? Wouldn't want to do that. But when I'm singing with people, people are singing around me, we're praising God. It's safe. It's comforting. I think you feel most in the hands of the Lord. And what's interesting is it's with community that you feel in the hands of the Lord. And you're in an environment when you're focused. When you're at home, you're like, I'm thinking about napping. I got to think about my dog or my phone. But when you're at church, you have put yourself in a position to focus on God. I mean, they talk about you should not study, you should not do rigorous intellectual activity on your bed, because you're going to start associating your bed with intellectual activity, and then you won't be able to sleep, and then you're not going to have good intellectual activity because you're associating this place where you're studying with sleep. And it's the same thing. You go to a church and your body is associated, your mindset is associated with praising and loving God. And I think that is so important. In fact, I was talking about it, don't compartmentalize it to Sunday. Go out with some friends, with some like-minded believers. You don't even have to have a Bible study on a Friday, on a Thursday, or whatever, but go out and go bowling or something. Go out and go have dinner or something. Just spend time with people, because, man, it is so beautiful being in a community of believers, of people who love one another. You love people how Christ calls us to love. Love is sacrificial. Like I said, it's willing the good of the other person, with that caveat, for their sake. Being around people who do that, man, it's so amazing and it's so strengthening. Can you imagine having to go through this world, the idols, the sin, the temptation, by yourself? Can you imagine that? I'm sure you can, because you've tried it. I've done it before. There's been times where I've forsaken times with community, and I'll probably do it again because I'm that sinful. But man, it is so, it's a vice. It grips you. It constricts your faith from growing. And man, I mean, you probably hear this passion in my voice, and like, it's so true. I believe it. And another thing about being in a community with people is your sin is gone. Well, it's not gone, but it's brought to light. You can share your burdens. man, I'm telling you, Satan is the king of darkness. He wants that sin to be in darkness, and he doesn't want to be exposed because he knows that when it exposed, there's a reason why Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and, oh wait, he said the life, not light, my bad. But God is the light. You get that parallel in John. God is the light. When that sin is exposed to the light, it has so much less power. And that light is being made, it's just simply it being made aware. And when it's being made aware to other people around you, you now become accountable. And it has loosened its grip. Oh, wow, that was a bad snap. Hold on. All right, that was a terrible snap, but it gets loosened like that, snap sound. All right? So, man, yeah, be in a community of believers. Go to church on Sundays. And don't compartmentalize it to Sundays, man. Man, it's so important. Wow. I got fired up. I'm getting a little warm. I got to take another drink. One more. Okay. He has another question. Very deep question. Very big one. We're kind of running out of time a little bit, but I will keep it short. He says, Michael, my second question is, do you think you fall in line with old earth creationism or young earth creationism? I've heard convincing arguments for both sides, and I believe this is a larger topic that no one talks about. Michael, I'll do a show on this. I was thinking about it. I will do a show on this. So look forward to that. Everyone else, if you're curious, look forward to that. I will tell you this. Let me give you two schools of thought. Young earth creationism, I literally thought was stupid. Like before I was a believer, I thought it was legitimately stupid. And just bear with me for a second. Because there's so much scientific evidence for the earth being very old, the universe existing for a very long time. So let me give some credence to it, to young earth creationism. God is so powerful that why couldn't he create a young earth? Now, you might say, well, why did he create the earth to be young? Or why did he create the earth to look old, but it's actually young? Is God deceiving us? There's a little bit of a hint of where I stand. But think about this. Jesus' first miracle, okay, turned water into wine. And he brought it out, or I should say the servants brought it out, and the headmaster of the party, the MC or whatever, said, wow, this is the best wine. Everyone has the best wine in the beginning, and we bring the cheap wine at the end, but you have made the best wine at the end. And the best wine, not that I would know, so I'm told, is the wine that's aged, right? You think of high class. Oh, yes, this wine is from 1930s France, made from an old isolated family who would wake up at 3:30 a.m. every morning to pick grapes, or something like that, right? So, sorry, but yeah, wine is aged. That's the best wine, but Jesus made it right there. Seems to me, God being all powerful, it's possible. Also, the argument for evolution supporting the old earth creationism has some problems, mainly with and maybe at some point I could have a friend on and we could talk about this, but mainly with the point of the fossil record doesn't actually match what we would expect if the theory of evolution was true. I don't want to expand on that because I'll bring my friend on at some point. He knows a lot more. It'll be much better. We'll spend time on that. Now, on the other hand, with the earth being old, I hear you have to take a very literal interpretation of Genesis. Well, I have some problems with that. One being that the word day is spoken before the earth was actually created, before the literal 24-hour day was made. So that begs the question, how long was a day? What did a day mean? And I think it's more representative of maybe a long period of time. Certainly think it's possible. But I don't think it's smart to take, or I don't think it's good wisdom to assume to take Genesis very literally, because, or you shouldn't start with that, I guess, preconceived notion. Trying to find start. You shouldn't start with that assumption just yet, because there are many other books in the Bible who are that are different genres. You have poetry, you have wisdom literature, you have historical accounts, you have laws written. So certainly for the poetry and wisdom, sometimes you just can't take it literally, like at all. It wouldn't make sense. I mean, you look at the book of Revelation, that's another thing. It's like, whoa. He talks about the fig tree being shaken. Like, do you think that God is going to shake a huge fig tree over the earth? I don't know. But think about this. Jesus himself told parables. Now, if you believe, like I do, that the Bible is the inspired word of God, it is inerrant. God basically worked through man to write the Bible. If you want to know more about why I believe that, ask me. But Jesus spoke in parables. Now, something that comes to mind is his parable about, what is that? I forget what the name of the parable is, but it's in Luke. And it's the parable about how the landowner, he creates a field, he creates a watchtower, he creates a big wall, and then he has servants serving the field, and then he goes away and he sends servants saying, hey, I want my portion of the field, and then I'm going to come take it back. And then they keep killing the servants, and then they kill his son. And I don't think that's not literally what God did. I mean, it's meant to be representational, not necessarily metaphorical, but representational. I think if you take a representational approach to Genesis, I don't see any conflict with the earth being old, actually, at all. I really don't. Now you start getting into questions about Adam and Eve. That's all interesting. I will tell you this. It has nothing to do with salvation. I know when we get to heaven, we're going to see people who believe that the earth is only 6,000 years old, and then you're going to see people like myself who believe the earth is much older than just that. Theologians, philosophers have been debating on this for a very long time. The debate will probably continue forever. I will do a whole show on this, getting more in depth, but yeah, it doesn't hinder salvation by any means, and we'll find out in heaven. What if we're all wrong and we totally missed the meaning of Genesis? I don't think that's going to happen, because I think God would have written Genesis a little differently. But anyways, okay. Let's see how much time we got. 48 minutes, perfect. I want these podcasts to be anywhere from 40 to 50 minutes. I guess an hour at most. Try not to babble too much. But so, how to reach out to me. Right now, since the podcast isn't huge, it'd be great if it was. If you want to reach out to me, ask me questions. I want you to ask me questions about the show. You can ask me questions about anything. Maybe you have something that you're dealing with, an intellectual problem. Please ask me. I want to talk about it. Like I said in that advertisement, let's figure out how to navigate the world together as young people. And maybe you're an older person and you have some insight to offer me that I'm not seeing. Please, I want to hear that too. I'll try my best not to say okay, boomer. So Sorry, I just had to say that. It wouldn't be a Gen Z show without at least saying okay boomer once. But so comment on the show. I'll read your comments. I think there is a way to send messages on YouTube, but if not, just comment. If you would like to keep it more private, well, you could also tweet at me. Tweet at, it's at Resurgency PDCST. You can tweet at me your question. You can DM, direct message me your question on that Twitter account. If it's a little bit more, you want to, maybe it's a long question, you could DM me. I know that most of this, that pretty much everyone listening right now all knows me personally, so you probably have a personal way of contacting me. Just for now, in the infancy stage of this podcast, you can use that means to reach out to me. I'm perfectly fine with that. If you do want your name to be anonymous, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just give your first name. Let's see, is there anything else? Oh, yeah. I want hopefully this podcast will be on YouTube, or it will be on YouTube, but it should be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you have any issues figuring that out, let me know. Man, this was a blast. This was awesome. I'm super pumped for the rest of this podcast. Man, so excited. Okay. Pray, read the word, get in a community of believers, follow God. All right, I'm not real sure what my signature closing will be, but otherwise, I'll just see you in the next one. Oh, wait, actually, first, before you go, tell people about it. Tell your friends. Tell people who don't really believe in Christianity. Say, hey, come ask this guy questions and listen to him rant passionately about them. Okay? Go tell people. Tell your dog. All right? Tell people about it. Let's figure out how to get through this thing that we call life, this wonderful life that God has given us together. Let's figure out how we do that as Christians. Okay? All right. I'll see you guys in the next one.